Welcome to Quick Take. I'm your host, Susie Tomanchuk, along with James Capps, my co-host. How are you, James?
I'm great. I love how you're always so up on these podcasts. The energy is always fantastic.
You know, we got to get people hooked from the very beginning, and so I'm
Boy.
trying my best. Hopefully they'll stay. So, speaking of staying, I often get people that ask me about, what are they going to do after they're done with their career? They want to think about, what is going to be the next step. But it just makes me think about this opportunity. And we heard a lot about this during COVID and
Mm,
during those times about having a side hustle.
yeah,
And I love the idea of having a side hustle. From my perspective, it allows you to learn about something different, and you can be really creative. You can do something that is outside of the norm of your regular day to day, but it also gives you leverage to explore some ideas that you might want to do in your next version
sure,
of your
sure.
professional life. So how do you look at it?
Yeah, I think about it as I think brain candy is the phrase always that
Oh,
comes to mind. Where um, you know sometimes the job the your career is not going to fuel your passion. Maybe you're doing something that's not exactly this month is more grunt work, or things aren't going well, and you need a spark. That side hustle can be a source of lots of things, source of, like you said, energy, source of new experiences, sources of different perspectives. There's a billion ways to look at it, but I think it's equally important to evaluate when you're hiring or you're working with staff, is to talk about them, what they like to do in their spare time. um, Granted that the knee-jerk reaction during an interview is going to be, I just work so hard, I don't have anything else going on.
yeah,
Work-life balance is huge, and
yeah,
it's already tough enough given the always on capabilities we have,
yeah.
and the ability to reach people 24/7. Figuring this out and embracing the side hustle is a key thing.
Yeah. And what's interesting about what you just said is I feel like we normally define work-life balance as working and family,
Yep.
working and family. And there's other components of kind of
Sure.
that balance around what really lights you up, what do you love to do,
Hmm.
and giving ourselves the license to explore that. So
Yeah,
what
I think the key to that is balance, right?
yeah.
You need balance, and there's lots of things that can go into that scale. And you're right. I think work life is an easy, maybe overused phrase, but the reality is you've got to find ways and outlets. And I think
Mhm.
that's really my first tip is, you've got to accept the reality that a side hustle is okay. Maybe side hustle is not a phrase you like. Maybe it's a passion project. Maybe it's a hobby.
Mhm.
Whatever that phrase is, realize that is as important to your well-being and to your job success and to your career
Yeah.
success as many other things. And so, people say you want to bring your whole self to the office. A healthy whole self, because of balance, I think is so important. So acknowledge the fact that a side hustle is a good thing.
Okay, so how are you framing this? Is this the leader? Is this the executive thinking about their own side hustle? Or is it also considering it for your team? Or is it both?
Well, I think that in this particular case, you as a leader, as a listener, you have to acknowledge that it's acceptable, but you also have to be supportive of that with your team
Yeah.
and with your directs. Um, I think that encouraging that, having a fun dialogue around that, is super interesting. I have a very good friend here in Denver who is a CEO of it could be Fortune 500. I'm not quite sure, but it's a very large company, and I know some of our listeners know who I'm talking about. And his LinkedIn page is about his pottery,
Oh, interesting.
and that's it, because that's his side hustle, and it gives him a
Wow.
tremendous amount of satisfaction. So that
Yeah,
is, that's a very much a leaning into the reality that a side hustle is important.
is really good. I had a client who was flipping houses with her husband as her
Hmm.
side hustle, and she was really tight with her boss, and she shared that with her and was really excited about it. And a couple months later, when her boss perception was that she wasn't as engaged as she used to be,
Hmm.
started kind of holding that against her, like, you aren't spending as much time here, and used as an excuse. So I think there's a bit of maturity here
Absolutely.
that you have to take, and if you're gonna be open about it, you have to have an open mind about it.
And that's a great segue into my second piece of advice on this is you have to then start to actively consider the value of that side hustle and what it brings to your job so you can both articulate that to yourself and to others. I think that, for example, if my side hustle is doing a podcast, and I talk to my leadership team about why I do this, it's because it requires me to reevaluate my skill set on a daily
Yeah.
basis, on an episode by episode basis. I
Yeah.
go back and look at the best practices. I don't run into the Dunning Kruger effect and think I know everything. So it is keeping me sharp.
Yeah.
And as my company looks at my side hustle, it should know that it is me sharpening the tool on a
Okay.
regular basis.
Yep.
So sure, if your side hustle seems to be incongruent, which is totally acceptable, realize that you have to embrace that there is some value add, whether it's
Mhm.
better people skills, patience, maybe it's your sanity. Help your
Nice.
boss or your peers or your leaders
Yeah.
understand that the value it brings to the table. Not that I'm just goofing off doing something, I'm off, playing pickleball. It is like that brings a lot of other things to the table and is beneficial for me as an employee.
Yeah, I think that's great. I guess I still kind of get what if that person then has performance issues? Do you bring up that because if you're being that open about it, do you also bring that as a part of what is getting in your way? Let's talk about
Sure.
that and keep it that open all the time.
If I was coming to work every day and explaining that my baby was crying and being a challenge,
Yeah.
and then I had performance issues,
Okay.
would the
Fair.
baby be part of that conversation or not? I don't know. I don't think it would be.
That's
It'd be
so
like you have performance
interesting.
issues
Yeah.
and you got to fix that. What you got going on over here is part of that, but I'm not going to say it's because of the baby. It shouldn't
Yeah.
be because of the side hustle. Now, that is my third tip though, is you've got to time
Mm.
box that to side hustle. Right? Because when you start at least you can see it, and I have seen it. I think we all have seen it, where somebody's just sitting at the copier, printing out something for their side hustle. They're scheduling other meetings and they've got stuff going on. That's no longer a side hustle, right?
Yes.
they are now just they're
That's
now
fair.
cannibalizing their time and effort for what they are arguing is a cool thing. Now it's a side hustle. So but if you
Yeah.
are genuine, if you're following these steps, like, hey, look, I'm going to embrace the reality that I have to have some brain candy, that I need a side hustle, and B, I'm going to take a look at what I get out of that and apply it at work, and C, you really need to time box it and ensure that that passion doesn't overwhelm and consume everything. And if it does, maybe it's time to consider a career change. But
Yeah.
as a side hustle, the operative word on side hustle is
Mhm.
side, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's super important.
Outside, yeah, and just because your boss is open to it doesn't give you permission to let it seep in more about that. It gives you
100%.
more you have to be a lot more, careful and respectful so that it doesn't do that. You have to have a level of maturity around respecting that side hustle
Absolutely.
because
I think it's just, that's another episode I'm sure we have done or will do about, managing your
yeah,
boss, managing your
yep,
relationships at work. And sure, there are times that it makes sense to explain what your side hustle is. And then sometimes, you know what, you just have a side hustle and that's your side
yep,
hustle. You don't need to show up and broadcast that. Um,
fair.
it's about how you chose to show up at work and the kind of relationship you have. But at the end of the day, I think it's part of the equation.
Yeah, and maybe if that guy showed up to your one-on-one staff meeting and he is actually has his he's turning a
Potting
pot,
wheel.
that would
Yeah.
probably
It's a little
be
much.
like
A little
stepping
much.
over.
Right, right, right. I can't do the meeting because I'm teaching a yoga class at noon. No, that's not a side hustle. That's another job. Um, so
All right. What are those 3 tips around having a
yeah, I
side
think three is, the first one is acknowledge the fact that side hustles are good. We
Yeah,
can call them passion projects. We can call them, hobbies, whatever it is. You as a listener today and know that they're good for you and acknowledge that and accept that, whether it's for you or your staff. Two, understand that there's a lot of value that comes out of that. And so even if your side hustle is completely orthogonal to your career, there are a lot of things that apply to that. And once you recognize those, you can really leverage them and be better at your job. And then three, time box it. Keep track of that and make sure that it's not all consuming. I think if you are you're eating into your productivity, then you need to check your six and make sure that your side hustle is truly on the side.
Yeah. I think this is great. We put a spotlight on something that people often don't talk about. And the
Sure.
point is, it's a really great thing. So
No, it's super
great
good. I
tips.
think it's healthy.
Yeah. Thanks so much, James.